Moderator.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to welcome one and all to the brokers and the analyst meet for the IPO of Nazara Technologies Limited. It is indeed a landmark day that we are looking forward to the first online gaming company to be listed on the Indian capital markets. On behalf of the company and the book running lead managers to the issue, namely IIFL Securities, ICICI Securities, Nomura Financial Advisory and Securities, and Jefferies India, I welcome everyone. Let me begin by first introducing the company team. Today with us, we have Mr. Vikash Mitrasen, Chairman and Managing Director, Mr. Nitish Mitrasen, Joint Managing Director, and Mr. Manish Agarwal, CEO of Nazara Technologies Limited. Representing the BRLMs, we have Mr. Ashwini Khare from ICICI Securities, Mr. Mohit Pandey from Jefferies, Mr. Sumit Sukramani from Nomura, and myself, Kunur Baveshi, representing IIFL Securities. Indian economy is undergoing a radical transformation, with several industries experiencing a shift in the way they contribute to the economy. Gaming is one such sector which has progressed from just a video games or PC consoles to a graphically immersive and social form of entertainment anytime, anywhere. The proliferation of affordable smartphones, high-speed internet, and reduction in data prices has accelerated the growth of the mobile gaming industry, which is estimated to reach US $3.1 billion by 2023, which will make it bigger than Bollywood. Nazara Technologies is a leading India-based diversified gaming and sports media platform with presence in India and across emerging and developed markets such as Africa and North America. Nazara today owns some of the most recognizable IPs across various segments, which is on the esports and esports media, Nodwin and Sportskeeda, World Cricket Championship and Carrom Clash on the mobile gaming, interactive gaming side, Kidopia in the gamified early learning ecosystem, and Halaplay and Konami in the skill-based fantasy and trivia games. Its content is developed in India for the Indian as well as the global audience, leading to economies of scale. Given its market first position in India across sports simulation and esports, Nazara is well placed to leverage the opportunity that the interactive mobile games, esports content, and gamified early learning apps offer. The company's average monthly average users has grown from little over 40 million in FY20 to 57.5 million in 9 months ended FY21. The company has delivered revenues of 5 million in FY20 and 2,004 million rupees in 9 months ended FY21, which are consolidated revenue, and which is how we believe investors should evaluate Nazara, given that one of the core strategies of the company has been to acquire, consolidate it, and grow its subsidiaries, who then become an integral part of the Nazara ecosystem. The red herring prospectus also gives all numbers on consolidated basis, which is also in line with the SEBI regulations. Coming to the IPO details, the price band has been set at 1100 and 110 to 1101 per share for a total issue size of rupees 5827 million at the upper end of the price band. The offering is 100% offer for sale for up to 17.38% of the pre-issue share capital of the company, which is 52,94,392 shares. The mix of selling shareholders is as follows. IIFL funds, which is approximately 82.9% of the OFS, promoters 13.1% of the total OFS, and the balance 4% by other selling shareholders. Other investors in the company, like Mr. Rakesh Jhunjhunwala, are not selling any shares in the IPO. We are extremely excited to bring the first gaming company IPO to the Indian capital markets and look forward to your support to make this a grand success. I would now like to hand it over back to the moderator. Thank you.
Thank you, Kunur. I now request Mr. Vikash Mitrasen, the Chairman and Managing Director of Nazara Technologies, to address the gathering.
Actually, moderator, let Nitish take it and then we can move it forward.
Over to you, Nitish.
Welcome everybody to this web conference by Nazara, and thank you for joining us today. Let me start by a quick introduction of Nazara and how we got started, and give you a little bit of a background. So, a quick background of myself. I started coding games at 7 when my father bought me a ZX Spectrum in basic language, and that became a passion for me right at that young age. I started Nazara in college in Mumbai when I was about 20 years old, way back in 2000. And the reason of starting Nazara was very simple. I saw that gaming could have a huge potential because my friends used to have a lot of passion for gaming, but I saw that the industry in India did not exist at that point of time. And I just felt that such a large country, how is it possible with such a young nation, how is it possible that gaming will not become large? That's how really the dream that India will become a gaming nation in the future is really what made me start Nazara way back in 2000. It's been a long journey for us, but we have persevered over the years, sustained ourselves. Our core DNA the early years have shaped our core DNA to, focus on profitable businesses, cash flow businesses, and we've adapted through the times. The business we operate in is technology, new media, evolves very fast, and over the years we have been able to navigate various such challenges and emerge stronger. And we believe that this IPO is going to be a milestone for us, but also a very important new beginning as this whole industry scales up. I strongly believe, after being 20 years in this business, that this decade is going to be the decade of gaming in India, where you are going to see this industry far surpass all other entertainment industries put together in the next few years. And that's not surprising because it can be seen in the US markets, it can be seen in many other markets. And I think you're going to see the same thing in India. As Nazara, we are as excited as we were in 2000. We're as excited today. And we are working extremely strongly to achieve our dreams, to achieve our goals, and look forward to all your support taking this forward. So with that, Manish, can we start the presentation, please?
Yes, thanks. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Nitish. Hi, everyone. A very good afternoon to you, and welcome to Nazara's story. This is the beginning of a relationship which we're all going to have. And this is just the first meeting, and look forward to many more interactions with you guys. And with your support, we will be able to really keep coming back to you with great progress, leveraging the growth which we are seeing in the gaming market. As Nitish said, this is a decade of gaming which we are all looking for. And Nazara has taken a very fundamental leadership role in esports, in gamified learning, as well as in the sports simulation genre, which are all very big consumer trends, very large addressable markets. And as they kind of grow, we would be in a very whole situation to take advantage of network effects, not only on revenue, but also on margin expansion. So we really have built a very strong springboard. And with that, I would just kind of open the presentation and quickly take you through some of the things which you are wanting to hear in terms of financial numbers. So who are we? As Kunur mentioned, we are a content creation company. We create our content in-house. We own our IPs. We are an IP owner. We own some of the most iconic IPs, World Cricket Championship, Nordwin, and various professional tournaments under esports, Sportskeeda. We have Kiddopia, which is a gamified early learning. And I'm happy and pleased to say that in line with the whole vision of Build in India, Build for Globe, Kiddopia has been a stellar success and one of its kind of achievement for an Indian company to really go garner share in a highly competitive market like US, build a brand, consumer brand among the global audience. So we have the capability and capacity to create quality, which is global standards, to retain and engage with consumers. And we have built a very strong community of 49 million monthly active users, which really has been built organically because what Nitish said, our DNA is a very frugal DNA of EBITDA conscious, LTV CAC conscious. So yeah. So just to kind of really give you a broad and very, very simple summary here, we have identified 3 large markets, which are mentioned here in terms of gamified learning, esports, and sports simulation. We have built leadership in these areas. We have built local differentiation and moats in these areas. We have a full diversification across businesses, across geographies, and across business models. Unlike a typical gaming company, which is quite reliant on one offering one service, we are not. So there is no concentration risk at all, which you will find in our portfolio. Most importantly, we have built the best team which you could really think of in an Indian market, which understands gaming, gamified learning, and esports. They're pioneers in each of these verticals. We have shaped the market, and this is the best A team which you could really kind of have under one umbrella for you to leverage the explosive growth in gaming which you are going to see. So with that, I will quickly just give you what businesses do we do. On esports business, it is about people, gamers watching other gamers playing in professional tournaments. So you have professional players who are playing in professional tournaments, and the fans of that game and fans of those players watch them on OTT platforms and on television. How do we make money here? We are the content creator. We have 100% share of voice of the premium content, which is live stream of the professional tournaments which we own, a live stream of the global tournaments which we take in vernacular languages, and our own studio and our own live studio from where we create content. We create this content. Because it's such high quality content, it resonates with community. It's a premium content. OTT platforms and TV guys pay us money, and we get a minimum guarantee. Second is game publishers who want to really reach out to more grassroots community. They pay us to build local heroes, city heroes, university heroes, because the more popularity of their game happens, the more in-app purchase happens in their game. So we get money from game publishers, and we get money from brands who come as sponsors who want to reach to 14 to 25 age group audience, which is the core audience here, and which is what is really happening. So this is a sports fan. It is a new age sports. A lot of us have watched cricket or watch cricket, tennis, soccer. 14 to 24, 5-year-old, they are watching people playing PUBG, Free Fire, Counter-Strike, Dota. And the whole excitement is really in 20 minutes, you get an excitement. Think of how T20 disrupted a test match in a one day. That's what we believe, that esports is going to disrupt this whole sports entertainment market. And today we have a market leadership completely into it. And we have very strong moats in it. And the business have very strong network effect to accrue more revenues as this market really grows, as well as the margin expansion. Second business which we do, which contributes to, esports contributes to 32% of our business. Gamified learning contributes to 39% of our business. This is a business where you are running a subscription app for children, 2 to 6-year-olds. Children, when they love a content, they just keep watching it again and again. The large trend which we are seeing here is you cannot take the child away from screen. As a parent, you want them to then watch healthy content, safe content, and content which kind of helps them to build and learn something. But it's a very fine balance between child wanting entertainment and parent wanting something which can inherently, subconsciously teach them. That's what the space we have. We have a full team in-house which creates content. There is no licensing, there is no revenue leakage here. Given that the mindset and propensity to pay for high quality content and habit for paying for subscription services is more evolved and nuanced in North America and compared to India. We have started as phase 1 P0 market being North America, where we have gained we have grown exceedingly fast in last 3 years, and we continue to gain share. Our content resonates very well. Our engagement and retention numbers are very high, which creates very, very strong LTV CAC equation, and I will cover it later. This is a 2 to 6-year-old age group focused app called Kidopia, and I'll urge you guys to download and look at it. The third business which I spoke about is cricket simulation game, which is free to play mobile cricket game where like you play in your gully or in your college ground or in your Maidan. That's exactly how you play. You simulate that experience on a mobile game. It is not sports fantasy. It is absolutely the way you bowl. You have to bowl. You have to bat. You have to strategize on field placement. You really get the same feel as you play cricket, and you compete with others. Here, the business model is going to be in-app purchase as you kind of really build your own teams and compete with each other. We are a market leader here. We are saying 60-70% market share. This is a very, very big genre globally. Some of you must have heard of FIFA game, which is run by Electronic Arts, which is for soccer. That is the kind of ambition and vision we have to make World Cricket Championship, which is our own IP, to be what FIFA, which generates over $1 billion of revenue globally. How can we make a cricket synonymous with World Cricket Championship and make it super big IP in India, in South Asia, and other Commonwealth countries where the cricket fans reside. We have 15 million monthly active users here, all built organically, and they spent over 46 minutes per day. So huge amount of engagement, very strong community. We have got 170 million plus downloads of this game since its inception. And that is what really makes it very exciting franchise to own and to really nurture. We have entered 3 years back into sports fantasy through Halaplay. Most of you are familiar with Dream 11. Our view is that that market has recently, in last 1.5 years, seen some regulatory challenges with some states coming with adverse rulings to ban real money gaming, as well as lack of clarity on overall how to compute GST, because of which we have really taken a decision to be strategically cautious in this genre. This contributes to 3% of our revenue. We have a platform, we know how to do it, but our view is that it's a binary risk. Until such time that clarity emerges, we would be kind of we stay strategically cautious in this genre and focus on esports, gamified learning, and freemium, which are the 3 growth drivers which we are looking at, both in terms of revenue and margins. Last is a telco subscription business, which was our business which we have been running for 10-12 years. It's a mature business. It is a business which is not present in India anymore. It got disrupted with the Jio entry in 2016, 17, 18, because the payment was being collected from the telcos and the wallets with the prepaid wallets which consumers used to maintain. Once Jio changed from prepaid wallet to bundling, that payment channel got completely finished in India. And as a result, this business is not present in Africa, is present in Middle East and South Asia. We have built strong distribution pipelines, relationships in over 50 countries with over 100 telcos. Those pipelines we will in future leverage to reach out with esports and other premium content from our own portfolio. However, this business has declined, and I will cover that in my financial slides in a second. This is how our financial numbers really look like. We delivered 207 crores of revenue in April to September first half of this financial year. If you look at that number is 79% of the revenue which we delivered in full financial year of finishing March 20. March 20 itself, we grew 47% over March 19, which shows and demonstrates a very strong growth momentum resulting from the growth in esports, gamified learning, premium. These businesses are all firing and our growth. Our revenue mix has also changed from FY18 to first half. Today we get, as I mentioned in my previous slide, we get 32% from esports. We get 39% from gamified learning. We get 5% from freemium. As I mentioned, our telco subscription contribution is declined from 89% FY18 to 21% now and will continue to decline because of the growth in other segments, while telco subscription we look like as a flattish trend over coming years. Real money gaming, massive potential. However, as I mentioned, statutory issues. Once that clarity is there, this segment can itself becoming very big. But till such time, the contribution of this segment will also continue to drop, and we will focus on gamified learning, freemium, and esports. What you see also here is that the expansion and the growth of these segments is resulting into margin expansion. Our first half margins were 6% compared to 3.48% in the March 20, financial year ending March 20. It is all being driven by the margin improvement in esports, gamified learning, and freemium. And you would also see a decline in our EBITDA in FY18, 32%, to 17% to 3.48. Just to preempt a question which some of you may have in the Q&A, this is directly correlated to the telco subscription business, which was high margin business, 35% plus EBITDA. As that business contribution is declined, and other businesses which are in growth phase and will remain in growth phase, they are if you see the revenues of FY18 and 19, in spite of decline in telco subscription, the revenue is flat. However, the change of revenue mix is reflecting in the EBITDA margins, where telco subscription business had high EBITDA margins, while these business, because of the high growth phase, have low EBITDA margin, and that's why you see a decline. Now you are coming to a stage where each of these businesses, because of the scale and network effect, is starting to demonstrate an expansion in EBITDA margins. So that is what it is really a commentary on the EBITDA margins decline. And I will also further take you through a slide which deep dives into EBITDA margins. Yeah, further little bit going more second level of deeper. If you see, as I mentioned, we have done 79% of our revenues of March 20 year in this first 6 months itself. Our esports and our gamified learning contributed to 71%. Our telco subscription contribution has reduced from 89% to 21%, and the growth is being driven by esports, gamified learning, and we expect freemium to join the party very soon. And from our perspective, that is where, if you see, our EBITDA margins have also increased. One thing which I want to kind of really take you through is that our EBITDA margins are increasing, absolute numbers are increasing. However, you see an increase in depreciation and amortization. Also, that is coming from the asset base, which has really grown, and that has grown on account of acquisitions which we have made. And the intangibles depreciation amortization is what is you see really pulling down the PBT and PAT numbers. So if you look at from a corroborating the statement, which is in our DRHP, that we have a very EBITDA focus, you will continue to see that, and we were very, very confident that a profitable growth is what we are really looking at, while the non-cash depreciation cost from the acquisitions is what is presenting to a negative PAT kind of a number. Yeah. The other thing which I wanted to kind of highlight to you is, if you look at our mix, 39% of our revenue is coming from gamified learning. For some of you who would, again, preempting a question which might come in the gamified learning business, it's a pure subscription business. It's a beautiful business in terms of LTV CAC. The chart on the bottom, if you see, we spend roughly $20 to $25 in acquiring our consumer, while in 24 months, we make $65 at a gross level. So we make $3 for every dollar we spend. The cost of content and all is very small. Now, this business at a stable state, just to do the maths for you, $65 lifetime value of 24 months, we still have 14% users retained. So $65 will increase, but let's, for the sake of discussion, take $65. $65, you kind of remove 30%, that makes it $45. And you are spending $20 on trial. Our content cost, which I explained to you, is all India. It's based in-house. But the beauty of it is that our ability to understand the consumer and engage with them is demonstrated that after 1 week free trial, 75% of our users convert to subscription. Right? And from that perspective, if you see, the $24 means 75% conversion, roughly around $30 is your cost of subscriber. In 24 months, you're making a net $45 revenue, which means you're making a $15. 15 divided by 45 is almost 30%, 33% margin. And our content cost is equal to manpower, you can see in the numbers. So you are looking at it from a steady state point of view, a 20-22% EBITDA margin business. Since marketing is the 80% cost, you will understand that this is a lever which you can really choose how much to really grow. And your accounting point is what I wanted to highlight here. We have two plans here, 30% of our revenue comes from annual subscription. 70% of our revenues come from monthly subscription. Annual subscription, the money which you spend to acquire them is accounted in the same month, while the revenue is accounted over 12 months. For those who wish to kind of double click, they can go to our balance sheet under contract liabilities. You will find that revenue sitting. And that's what really will give you a reconciliation of the revenues which are going to come in future and which we have collected upfront, and hence it's a liability. So from that perspective, you are booking your revenue in that month, you're booking your expense in that month, you're booking your revenues over next 12 months. That's one reconciliation between expense booked and revenue earned. And that's why your EBITDA will look different. Second is our monthly subscription, which is 70%. As I mentioned, in 24 months, we still have 14% of our monthly subscribers really being retained. Our 12-month subscription is 33 to 36%. Our CAC break-even is around 9 to 9.5 months. After that, it's all profit, which goes to EBITDA. So if you look at you are again from an accounting point of view, you are accounting all that expense in the same month, but you have a long-term retention where the revenues are going to come. So combination of these two things gives you, and the third point, that marketing is only 80%. That gives you marketing as a lever, that how much of subscribers do you want to prepone and how much, and show and look at incurring a higher expense and hence negative EBITDA, or how much of lack of marketing you want to do and jack up your EBITDA. So it's a balance. Our view is that the market is large. It's a very, very large 25 million kids market in US. We have gained share amongst highly competitive market. For us, it will not be the right strategy to kind of throttle growth at the cost of EBITDA. We would like to have a balance between revenue growth and EBITDA margins and continue to drive that. Having said that, this business will not, it is the expense which we did in the last 18 months. We grew almost 5x because we increased our expenses, and we wanted to see, and the reason we did it, we wanted to see impact on conversion from a free trial to activation. We wanted to see impact on our break-even numbers, because typically we want to prove ourselves before we come to you that increase and a rapid scaling, will it regress the key KPIs, which may impact LTV CAC. And we are razor sharp that we want to grow profitably. We want to grow with LTV CAC. So we did that experiment to grow it very fast. And now we have found a sweet spot, or a month-on-month spends increase versus EBITDA. So I just want to kind of really assure you that unit economics wise, it's very profitable. Walk from unit economics to EBITDA, which I did on a steady state, it's a 20-25% EBITDA margin business. Now it's a question of how fast we want to grow and how much we want to grow in what time. That's the artificial lever we have. And we are, as a company, very conscious about having a balance between revenue growth and EBITDA. So that's what I also wanted to kind of preempt. Now, if you see what I mentioned here is a key growth drivers. These are the three businesses: esports, freemium, and gamified learning, which we are focusing. Both we have a revenue driver levers of geographical expansion across all three verticals. We have levers of improving our ARPU across freemium and gamified learning. And esports, it's a very, very strong network effect, as you would have seen in an IPL, the first 10 years of media rights versus the next 10 years of media rights. You saw the difference in the bidding which happened for those rights. That's the same thing which we are doing. We are owning IPs here. We are owning those professional tournaments where we are the 80% market share. And as those IPs keep becoming bigger, the competitive pressure between OTT platforms will ensure that the media rights revenue which you accrue from that IP will keep growing. And as more and more users keep watching that, our ability to create higher sponsorship from the brands or generate more sponsorship increases. That has a complete effect on the revenue. We have a very strong network effect built into each of these businesses. If you look at the gamified learning, the more engagement happens, the better ratings, reviews, retention, downloads happen, you rise up on the charts. The more parents will be able to discover you, they will read your reviews, and very, very strong reviews. If you please go on the site and read it, you will be very pleased that this company is offering very healthy content, which we are very proud of, and the parents love it. So that really helps you in getting more organic downloads. Plus, the word of mouth in this category is very strong. All of us who have parents, we know how do we really discover things from the kids. Similarly, if you see the cricket, it's a community. We have built a 15 million monthly active user. We get 100,000 downloads a day without spending a single penny. And as the in-app purchases increase within the game, the cost of goods sold is zero, and that will flow into EBITDA margins. So with that, I would just kind of really summarize the key investments highlight. One, we are a very diversified portfolio. You're not taking a bet on one particular game. You actually are taking a bet on the India and other emerging markets gaming story. That is one thing which is very clear. Second thing is we don't have any statutory risk in our portfolio. It's a very non-real money gaming portfolio with real money gaming sub 3%, contribution going down. So it's a very kosher, clear, clean portfolio with high growth momentum in the market itself. In a high growth market, we have built leadership positions and we have very strong moats to defend that leadership position and to strengthen and augment it. Why it will happen? Because we have IPs, and those IPs become have a very inherent affinity with the community, and that is resulting into a community of 49 point something million monthly active users, which is what 49.25, which is what we continue to grow. And our structure and our approach and our ability to work with strong leaders and leadership teams and work with them as an outside-in founder and grow them is something which is very unique. If you look at esports business, it's grown 8x in 3 years. If you look at gamified learning, it has grown 5x in less than 24 months. Our ability to demonstrate and scale companies working with the founders is something which is very well proven. And we would like to continue more what we call Friends of Nazara network in addition to that network. Last but not the least, as I said, this is the best team, self-driven, passionate, hungry set of people who want to build their legacy, who are really determined to really take advantage of the opportunity which is lying in front of us. And that's what we are here. On that front, I will give it back to Nitish, who has lived this dream for 20 years. And Nitish, your comments.
Sure. Thank you for that, Manish. Before we jump into the interactive Q&A, I will just quickly summarize what I want to share and emphasize on is the key DNA of Nazara. I think as Manish mentioned, we have built a diversified business by products as well as by geographies. And this is extremely important in the gaming business because, as you would know, it's very easy to become a one game hit wonder. It's very easy to get disrupted by technology changes or consumer preference changes. And the diversified platform and ecosystem play that we have allows us to sustain and evolve with the market without being disrupted. And I think that's going to be extremely crucial for the company as this industry grows over the next decade or so. I think a few other points I want to highlight about Nazara over the last couple of decades that we've been in business. I think we have been very capital efficient company. To give you a perspective, up to 2017, we had raised only 12 crores of primary capital, and the company had accumulated in excess of 200 crores of reserves through profit accumulation. So we understand and value capital, and we intend to continue doing the same. The other thing that's very important for the company and for me personally is extremely strong corporate governance. The company has no audit qualifications. We've been audited by top 4, top 5 auditors for over 11, 12 years without any qualifications. So I think that commitment for corporate governance will continue to be there, and only we will be putting in a lot of effort to make it even more stringent, even more transparent as much as possible. I think that's something I'm going to personally drive post our IPO as well. Another thing we don't like and which we have stayed away from is litigation. We have a track record of no litigation against us over this entire period, and we strongly believe that time spent in positive effort and positive work is far better than time spent in negative energies. Investor commitment: we have been very fortunate to be backed by marquee investors right from Westbridge Capital, who invested us in 2005, to Mr. Rakesh Jhunjhunwala, who invested in us in 2018. All of our investors spend a lot of time with us, give us a lot of guidance, and we really value that. And our commitment to all investors will continue to be there. The Friends of Nazara network that we have built, which is a very unique approach to building this business. I think taking one step back, I really feel that one of the biggest differentiators for our business is going to be the management team, because as this gaming business explodes in India, the biggest differentiator is going to be how strong is your management team. And our management team today comprises of a number of founders in the gaming industry in India, all experienced, a number of professional management teams, all experienced, very focused on their verticals and doing some fantastic work. And I believe that's going to be a huge asset for Nazara as we go forward. I would like to conclude by saying we have had a dream since 2000 about India being a big gaming nation. Today, with the mobile revolution that has happened in India, the data revolution that has happened in India, with data costs coming down, data speeds becoming faster, hundreds of millions of Android smartphones in the market, I think the dream that India can be a top 3 gaming nation in the world is achievable, and we will see it happen over the next decade that we are in today. And as Nazara, this is our dream. I'd like to share a quote: only as much as we dream can we be. And with all your support, I believe we will all achieve this dream together. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sirs. We will now open the floor for the Q&A session. We have already received some questions. So while we take those up, I request everyone to post their respective questions in the Q&A panel at the bottom of the screen. We will try our best to ensure that everybody's questions are answered. However, we will not be taking repeat questions in the interest of time. The first question. The H1 FY21 numbers are highly impacted by people staying indoors due to COVID-19. Now that people are moving back to colleges and offices, how do you think you will sustain the users and the numbers going forward?
So if you were to kind of really look at it, 39% of our revenue is coming from gamified learning. And as I mentioned, we've grown 5x to 6x in last 2 years, 2.5 years. And it is, if you were to kind of really look at, is it a COVID phenomenon or is it a steady state phenomenon? Few bullet points for you to really understand. It's a market which is North America, which is where the kids are already consuming content and you are not creating a new category. You have a YouTube as your competitor. You have Disney Plus as your competitor. You have ABC Mouse as your competitor. So it's a share of time which you are trying to earn. It's a share of wallet which you're trying to earn. And it is not a category creation. Now, what you're trying to really do that in that category, you're trying to cater to that narrow range of parents wanting a safe, healthy content, which subconsciously teaches their kids something, and kids entertaining, because if kids don't like something, they don't come back to it, as all of us know. So in that context, if you see, we have been growing before COVID, we have grown during COVID, and we are continuing to grow post-COVID. Now, if you want to unpeel it further, the key KPIs are your activation ratio, which is free trial to subscription. That number has been 75 to 77% range bound pre, post, during. Your retention numbers from month 1, month 6, month 12 are all in the range bound numbers. So it's not that COVID has really increased the retention numbers or has made it easier for us to acquire and convert free trial to subscription. The 2 months which we really got impact was a cost per trial, which is usually ranges from 20 to 24, as I explained when I was explaining the LTV CAC equation. That fell to $14, $15. And we took advantage of that to accelerate our spends and garner more subscribers. So to me, this is a behavior which is a larger consumer trend of this segment of audience consuming more time screens becoming their entertainment options, their learning options. And we are riding on that longer time frame trend and working on our ability to create content which resonates with them. Similarly, if you were to look at esports, our number of participants, our number of viewers who are watching a premium content has been growing. And as a result of that, our revenue has grown 8x in 3 years. It is not that we have got a jump in last 12 months. So from my perspective, where I look at KPIs and I look at a business PNL, it is not a COVID related growth, which is what we are seeing. It is the secular larger consumer trends, which we sat down in 2016-17 and embarked on that journey. This is the outcome of that foundation which we have led, and we are just beginning.
Thank you. The next question is around esports. What is the typical duration of licensing contracts you have with ESL? What is the typical license fee that you pay to them? Is it fixed or a revenue share agreement?
So let me answer the underlying question, because that is what the question is. How much is our dependency on ESL contract and how much of our revenue is coming from ESL, and hence how much is the leakage because of the ESL license? I think that's the question which is being asked. And to answer that, our revenue contribution from ESL is negligible. So that's number one. Number two, ESL is not a relationship which can be translated and viewed in terms of PNL. It is a relationship between the companies where we have benefited a lot from building our capacity and capabilities on how to create a global quality experiences offline in stadiums as well as in online. We share a great relationship and rapport with them in terms of knowledge sharing, training. Plus, today we are the natural partners in the emerging markets where they dominate Europe and they are looking at big time into US. We are looking at building and carving out the emerging markets like South Asia, Africa, Middle East. And that's where it's a natural partnership for us to look at. Third point, is we're very, very strong on PC, while the markets which we are operating are very strong on mobile. And we are today world's largest mobile-based, games-based esports company. And we have built that expertise to create formats of mobile games and build experiences on OTT platforms for people to understand what's happening from that small screen. Imagine watching a cricket match on your TV screen with one camera covering one kid and no commentator. You will absolutely get bored, even if you are the biggest fan of cricket. That is what problem gets accentuated when the stream, the view is only that small screen. Our ability to take that screen feed and make it an entertaining experience for a viewer is what we understand. So from just to kind of alleviate your apprehension around ESL, today we value that partnership strategically far more, but in terms of PNL or leakages in PNL, that does not affect us.
Thank you. Next question. What are the changes or the growth boosters that you provide to a company once you acquire it?
Nitish, do you want to take that?
Manish, can you repeat the question? I didn't hear it.
So what are the growth boosters do we provide to the company when we acquire them?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so I think our approach for acquisition, since we are not financial investor, and we are a strategic, is to first identify whether an acquisition makes sense in terms of value addition, right? Is 1 + 1 = 3, 4, 7, 10, and how is that going to be possible? That is the only filter we first use to decide whether a company is worth acquiring. Does it fit into strategic areas of businesses where we want to enter? Now, I can cite a couple of examples of the acquisitions we have done, and in terms of how we have been able to kind of supercharge their growth. Let's start with Kiddopia, which is our gamified early learning business. We could see that this product was extremely popular with young kids, was getting great retention, but it was being offered on a pay-per-download model. You paid a fixed amount and downloaded the product. Given that Nazara had over a decade of experience in subscription services, we advised the management team there and worked with them to convert this into a subscription model, where we also started delivering monthly content updates. And this business model helped us achieve a lot better LTVs that allowed us to spend more, and we were able to scale the business in 24 months, deliver 500% growth from a 30 crore annualized run rate to nearly 200 crore annualized run rate. So I think similarly, the esports business, because Nazara has had significant geographical distribution expertise and capabilities built up over a decade, especially in emerging markets like the Middle East, Africa, South Asia. We're working very closely with the esports team to take some of these businesses in those markets. The third example I would give is the synergies that are getting developed on the Nazara ecosystem or the Nazara platform. Let's take esports itself again. We believe that esports around cricket will be very large in India. And today we own the esports asset in Nodwin, which is the largest esports company in India. And we also own Next Wave, which is having the World Cricket Championship franchise, which is the most popular cricket game in the world on mobile phones. So now we are working together with both these teams to create a lot of esports around cricket, and you can go to YouTube, etc., and search for it, and you'll find a lot of interesting content. We believe these are the kind of synergies we can develop. So I think if I zoom out, we bring to the table our audience, we bring to the table our connections, our global network, and a variety of other expertise and experience, which helps these companies scale fast. And in multiple of the companies we've acquired in the last 3-4 years, you will find, if you plot the graph pre and post Nazara entering, you will find a hockey stick curve, and we hope to continue to replicate that.
Thank you. Next question. Why has the telecom subscription revenues been coming down? Also, it seems your revenue has been bolstered by acquisitions. What is the growth like in the core business?
So I'm going to answer that. I think there are two things. The telco subscription business in India took a large hit in 2018 because of the advent of Jio, where the data pack started getting bundled, and all content was bundled with it. That also put a lot of pressure on the other telcos. Many of them, as all of you know, went out of business, and these used to be our customer base as well. So we saw our India business dry up, which was almost 50% of our global telco business. The international business continues to be steady for us. It's not growing very fast, but that's because of changing consumer preferences, where a lot of content is available for free to download on Google Play or Apple Store. And that's a fundamental challenge in that business. We expect that business to continue to be steady, but we are not factoring in large growths. I think in terms of driving revenues from acquisitions, I think the point really here is that as early as 2015, 2016, when we were seeing the landscape in India change in terms of the large opportunity emerge in terms of mobile phone users and data speeds and all. And when Manish also joined us in 2015 from Reliance Games, he was the CEO there, he joined us. I think we sat back and said that what are the areas we want to enter? Where do we think there's going to be huge growth over the next decade? And what role can Nazara play in it? This is the first step we took. Then we identified these businesses and we said, how do we approach these businesses, right? Nazara had over 200 crores of cash reserves by then accumulated through our profits. And the esports business or the gamified early learning business or the sports simulation business, these are all businesses we could have entered organically, built from scratch and developed it. But the thought we really had was this, that we knew that in each of these verticals that we were very interested in operating, there were some great founders, some great teams already doing a lot of great work in the last few years. And we could have either started building organically, taken a couple of years, 3 years to kind of build these organic businesses and then compete with these peers, which were doing very well. But the thought we had is, why not align with them? Why not befriend them? And why not, come together as one team? Because finally we are all moving towards one big dream. And that's where the whole concept of the Friends of Nazara network was born. The Friends of Nazara network is based on 3 key pillars. We will acquire majority stakes in these companies while leaving enough equity in the hands of these founders so that they continue to see value creation through their own efforts. The second thing is we will give them equity in Nazara so that they get aligned to the overall platform, overall ecosystem, and all push together. And the third is we will give them full operational freedom to run the day-to-day business while we will continue to add value in the various ways I mentioned previously. I think this is the fundamental approach that we believe will allow Nazara to fast track, accelerate the growth of this platform at a much faster rate than what we would have been able to do it organically. And this is not something unique we are doing. If you look at large gaming companies globally, whether it's a Tencent, whether it's Electronic Arts, or many other examples, I think this is the approach that is being taken. And we believe this has done very well for us, and we will continue to accelerate in this manner. So we do not look at these businesses as organic or acquired businesses, because you must realize that after we acquire these businesses, we are working hand in hand with the management teams to develop these businesses. So for us, it's not a separate acquired business. After we acquire it, it's becoming our organic business. We are putting in everything that we know we have into the growth of these businesses. So I think that's really what I wanted to answer on this.
Thank you. A follow-up question to that. Are there any specific criteria that we use while evaluating acquisitions? Is it by product fit or is it by geography?
Nitish, let me take this.
Sure.
Yeah. So, guys, when we look at it, just to build on what Nitish said, there are areas which we've identified. For us, it's important to figure out that is this a large opportunity? Is there a moat which we can defend? And is there a leadership which we can do? And have we identified a growth lever which we can really think and press to grow very, very fast? And this needs to be at least 2, 3 growth levers, not just one, because then you're kind of risking yourselves. So I think those are the things which are on the rational analytical side. On the soft skill side, the founder first thinking which we have, that is very important. And understanding what is the ambition and vision of the founder, how are the alignment going to happen between us? Do we really see us kind of really become friends and respecting and trusting each other? I think those are the very important aspects for us when we look at augmenting this Friends of Nazara network and looking at a target.
Thank you. Next question. The company has fairly recently concluded 2 rounds of funding. Could you shed some light on the applications of the money raised? The question specifically is coming since the company has already more than 200 crores in cash and equivalents.
Yeah. So if you look at, I'm assuming 2 rounds which is being discussed here is being referred to Hornbill Capital investment into Nazara of 100 crores. And the second is Krafton investing 164 odd crores into Nordwind, combination of primary and secondary. That's what my assumption is. And basis that assumption, I'm going to answer this question. From a Nazara's perspective, we have identified white spaces to do further acquisition so that we can further augment our leadership positions in these 3 verticals of freemium, gamified learning, and esports. Esports, let me first take, which is where the Krafton investment really comes into the picture. Krafton is world's largest IP owner. It is one of the world's largest gaming company who owns PUBG as an IP. They also understand esports best because South Korea was the land of birth for esports business. Their guidance and their understanding of that space will help us in order to look at how further we can add value on esports. Plus, it is a great endorsement by the large gaming company on the conviction which Nazara has always had that esports will be very big in this country. It also is a very strong validation of the leadership position which Nordwind has and the guidance which now with Krafton, Nazara being there on board, we can really further provide. Besides the publisher esports relationship, which happens because of now 2 publishers, Krafton and Nazara being there on the cap table. So they are going to really use it for doing their M&A to acquire capabilities in Africa and Middle East rather than competing and grow faster. They are going to really look at this and building more professional tournament IPs, cups, leagues as they grow now. From Nazara's perspective, we see a 7 to 12-year-old gap in gamified learning. Kiddopia is 2 to 6, doing exceedingly well with expansion into Western Europe and China planned in future. But there is a 7 to 12, we believe that's a very different audience segment. And we would need to kind of plug that. And we will be looking at some acquisitions there. Secondly, the freemium business is very large. Globally, it's a $24 billion business. India, it's around 300 million. We would like to be far more aggressive in that vertical and have more IPs in the areas which are suited to mid-core, hardcore gamers and suited for esports. And we will be exploring acquisition there, which is where the current cash as a war chest will come very handy. If you would have noticed, we have done very astute acquisitions in the last 3 years, where we have taken the company at $3-4 million and grown them very fast. We would like to kind of really look at opportunities there where we can take a company and we can grow them faster. So that's how we are going to leverage this cash which we have and expand our ability, our geographical footprint, and Friends of Nazara network.
Thank you. There are a number of questions around the IPO valuation, so I'm going to clump them into one. Could you please help us understand the IPO valuation?
I think I have a privilege of 4 banks on the call, and these are the guys who have been our advisors in this whole process. And I would urge anyone, Ashwin, Mohit, Kunur, Sumit, one of you please take this. It's beyond our competency to answer that.
Okay, so Mohit, let me take this one. So just for the benefit of all, as we have said, Nazara is the first company which is being listed in the gaming space, and therefore clearly there's no competitor or peer. I would urge you to refer to page 94 of the DRHP, where it mentioned what's the basis for pricing. And as we have mentioned, there's no direct competition, and therefore there could not be a basis to allocate some multiples. But this issue is a book build issue. And in a book build issue, as you are aware, we go and meet a bunch of investors who are both international and domestic market investors. Those investors meet the management team, understand the business plan of the company, and they actually give a bid for a particular price. So at a price, they bid that these many shares they would want to buy. And we as bankers compile the demand for various price points in terms of creating that book. And we sit with the management and advise them that, yes, at this price point, this is the band at which this demand we are seeing. And based on that, we price the issue. So this process is called book building process, and Nazara's IPO is a book build process. And therefore, I would say that the basis has been really, the price has been derived from the book that we have built through this management interaction with the large pool of investors. Mohit, you want to add anything?
Mohit, you are on mute.
That is a fair point. The investors, are very familiar with the space, and in particular, they know where India stands, and as borrowing Nitish's phrase, the golden decade of gaming ahead of us. And they have seen companies, including Nazara and its peers, really ramp up metrics in the last 12 to 18 months. And so it is a reflection of their experience across the sector, across multiple companies. And it's a collective experience of a very smart group of people which is forming the basis for the outcome here.
Thank you, sirs. The next question. What are the EBITDA margins like across the various segments, esports, gamified learning, and freemium?
I think then it was all on the slide which I had presented, but for the benefit, I'll repeat it. We have looked in the first half of April to September, margin improvement in all these 3 segments. Esport has moved from 8 to 13%. Gamified learning has moved from -18 to -5%. And freemium has moved to 18 to 23%. These are the numbers. However, I would like to kind of really do that is, as a management, we believe that we would like to have a balance between revenue growth and EBITDA margins. And we are not really looking at maximizing EBITDA in a market which is going to be growing very fast. So I just want to kind of really state our thinking that we would be EBITDA positive, but we are not going to maximize EBITDAs.
Thank you. Next question. For gamified learning, the age group is 2 to 6 years old. So the potential revenue timeline best case is 4 years, but most likely average 2 years. So how are your plans to increase this, and how are your plans to generate IRR from here?
So if you look at it, we are having 300,000 monthly subscribers as of September 2020, as mentioned in our DRHP. If you look at the US market, it's a 25 million kids addressable market just in the US alone. And if you look at the kind of sampling which our app would have done, maybe 4% of the market. So from a growth opportunity point of view, we see a large headroom for us to get sampled. And if you remember what I said, a 75% conversion from free trial to subscription is a very, very strong number. And as we keep increasing our ability to get more and more people to sample us, our subscription base will increase. The only lever is how much of revenue growth and EBITDA margin balance you want to keep and maintain. That's point one. Point two is, if you look at 2 to 6 year old age group, there's a very homogeneous age group across the globe. And if you see the top 10 YouTube kids channels, some of them or most of some of these names would be common as varied countries across the globe. And that's why our next growth we have looked at is Western Europe. And then we like to figure out a right partner to enter into China and see what really we can do there, because we have looked at a company called iHuman Inc., which got listed 4 months back in New York Stock Exchange, which is closest to Kiddopia of China. And we have looked at their numbers and we believe we could be a very potential market for us in China there and with the right partnerships. So we see that geography expansion is one lever for us to grow. The US itself is another lever for growth. And we believe that as the per capita income increases, as the propensity in India to pay for subscription-based content services increases, the mass increases in the next 2-3 years, India would lend itself to a great opportunity as a P3 market. So P0, P1, P2, P3, that's how we are looking at our growth levers.
Thank you. Next question. The company spent considerable capital in acquiring Halaplay, in fact, as late as mid-2020, when Nazara hiked its stake in it. What was the rationale of increasing the stake when the company did not plan to scale the business?
So if you look at from our perspective, we wanted to really say that this is a business which is strategically cautious, as I mentioned. This is not really a high growth number. And we wanted to ensure that at this juncture, the leadership team, which is there in Halaplay, they wanted to really figure out a new venture opportunities, and they moved out, and we took their stake and ensured that they are very well rewarded for the efforts which they have done. And from our perspective, this is a long-term opportunity. We believe in that opportunity once the statutory clarity is there, and that's why we increase our stake. And there's an operating team which is completely running the show.
Thank you. Next question. Any plans for expansion of your game portfolio in hyper-engaging genres such as multiplayer FPS or racing, which could also leverage Nodwin's network effects?
So as I mentioned in freemium, we want to augment our IP base. We want to augment our user base of mid-core, hardcore users. And as the person who was asked question has identified these two genres as the right genres, there are 3-4 genres, sports simulation being one, FPS, mobile battle arena, real-time strategy. These are the genres which really lends itself to mid-core, hardcore gamers and IAP driven, with very strong lending itself to esports. We will definitely evaluate these options as we expand our freemium offerings.
Thank you. What are the strategies for further penetration of the US market, given the stiff competition in that geography? Do you expect US to account for the highest revenue share in the future?
So if you look at, we can talk about today, and the past, future I would like to avoid. From the today and past, if you see our marketing spends happen on Apple search, on Google and on Facebook. That's where we spend our marketing dollars in gamified early learning, and that's to acquire subscribers. And we will continue to do that in that market. And as I said in my earlier answer, that we are at 3-4% sampled, so we need to get more penetration of Kiddopia to happen. And we believe that ABC Mouse, which is our nearest competitor, is around 150 million to 200 million as per published information. They're 8 times of us, and that's the great milestone for us to look at and figure out how to continue to grow in that market, which is very large and offers opportunity for multiple apps to coexist.
Thank you. There are a couple of questions on data regulations. I'm just going to club them into one. Given that you operate in a fairly well scrutinized market such as the US and in markets such as India, where data regulations are up and coming, how do you plan to address the various regulatory regimes across your operating geographies?
Our Kiddopia app is COPPA compliant, it's FTC compliant. I would like to happily tell you that, because when you operate in the kids space, this is the most important part, is that you need parents to feel that this is an app which will not throw up inappropriate content. It will not throw up inappropriate ads. The data is not being taken for a variety of purposes, and which is where US government has really articulated a very, very detailed and stringent checklist, and third parties which kind of audit you. So we are COPPA compliant and FTC compliant. From the advertising point of view to acquire users, again, we are running it on Apple, Google, and Facebook, which adhere to all the norms which are being laid out in US as well as GDPR in Europe, and completely compliant of that. Otherwise, the App Store would kind of not really even let you have an app on that App Store. So from that perspective, it's a very, very kosher, very clean, clear business. If you look at our freemium business, again, it is a cricket app where we do not spend any marketing dollars. It's an IP-driven, community-driven kind of a user base, and that's what really creates a very, very high EBITDA today. And as we move along, in-app purchases is going to happen from the community itself. Esports, we are a content provider. We provide content to OTT platforms. We make money from the minimum guarantee. We do not really target guys to acquire users because we are not running a destination. So from that perspective, if you look at all segments, we are very absolutely compliant and kosher, and these things on as the strategy evolves, or as the policy evolves, our ability to kind of really change and adapt and continue to do that is possible, because entire user acquisition capabilities are in-house. They are not outsourced.
Thank you. The profits, margins, and ROE have been falling continuously from the last 3 years. Could you elaborate on the reasons for this?
I think I explained it when I was doing it. I will just explain it again. If you look at our FY18, it was 32% EBITDA margin. You also juxtapose this to 89% contribution coming from telco subscription. The telco subscription business was a high margin business, is a high margin business. And as that business declined, other segments, if you look at FY18 to 19, our revenues are flat in spite of a decline in telco subscription. Our March 20 FY20 numbers grew by 47% in spite of decline in telco subscription, or a steady state of telco subscription that didn't decline, my correction. So from that perspective, your revenue mix is changing. And since you are kind of trading a high margin business with a low margin businesses, that's why your EBITDA declined. And as we are seeing the scale effect, and I explained to you the gamified learning business, which is a subscription business, which is kind of an annuity business for you, a steady state 20%, 25% EBITDA margin business. With the growth, we will continue to see EBITDA margin expansion in the portfolio. And it is purely a function of management decision to decide how much of EBITDA margin to really go for versus how much of growth to go for. And our view is it needs to be a balanced approach.
We'll be taking the last couple of questions now. What is the market share of Nazara in the Indian gaming industry, given its first mover advantage and its leadership position?
It is very difficult to calculate that, given the nature of our diversified portfolio into multiple segments and multiple business models and multiple geographies. So it is really a question which will become quite a conjecture in terms of estimation, and I would avoid to doing it.
Thank you. Are there any exclusive esports gaming arenas being planned in India, like the ones that there are in European countries?
I am sure that will happen. Will Nazara be doing it? That is something as a strategy we have not discussed so far. We have not debated on it. Anything which is offline is something we need to really discuss and debate. However, I'm very sure with the growth of esports in this country, the infrastructure is needed for us to really create. Like, for example, I'll share you an anecdote. November 2019, we were having PUBG finals for India in Indira Gandhi's closed door stadium, and its capacity was 25,000, and we had to really return people because we couldn't accommodate. So that's what's happening in India. It was not happening anything abroad. And there was these guys who had come to cheer their gods of PUBG, 19-year-old kids. And they had the same electric atmosphere which you and I, or some of us, might have seen in cricket stadiums in India. So we really believe that infrastructure, large infrastructure for esports in India will accelerate the growth of esports. Whether Nazara is going to do it or not, that's something is a future strategy discussion, which is right now we've been really busy on growing on digital.
Thank you. We'll just take our last question for the day. What stops a new entrant to come in, infuse a lot of money, and develop better games, considering the growth in the market and the large size of the market? And how do you plan to protect your turf in case such a scenario occurs?
Gaming cannot be done with money. I can tell you that. Trust me on that. You can pour in huge amounts of money, and you would still be not sure that you can make any. Nitish and I have done exceedingly long service to the gaming industry, and we have seen it. We have heard this question in every Basant which passes, in that somebody will come and somebody will do it. By that logic, a Supercell would be creating hits after hits. A Zynga would be creating hits after hits. I would like to highlight, for those who are interested, please look at the consolidation which the large gaming companies do, whether it's Tencent, which buys investment into multiple global companies, takes the games back to China and publishes them after localization, or the consolidation which Zynga has done in the last 5 years to spur their growth, or EA Sports very recently has acquired very large two gaming companies. So consolidation in a gaming company, in a gaming vertical, in gaming industry globally is the name of the game, because when you make a game, you will always have butterflies in the stomach, and your probability of success is always a probability. There is never a surety. Which is why if you are in the business of creators, you're in the business of figuring out how to really grow something through synergies. And that's how the gaming industry worldwide has grown consolidation, which is where we as Nazara, what Nitish said, 2016-17 sat down and said that you need to really look at a cost of opportunity, leverage your strengths to build a very strong platform, which will work as a springboard for us to grow in this decade of gaming, which is going to be beckoning us, rather than trying to get saddled on 0 to 1. And we'll continue to adopt that strategy, which has been globally done and which has been proven very successfully.
Anish, can you just also talk about the Nodwin Krafton deal, because I can see many questions related to that.
All right, I'll do that. So I did that actually, but I'll explain. So Krafton is one of the largest gaming company worldwide. They are a South Korean company. They own IP of PUBG, and these guys have a very, very decade-old history of understanding gaming, building gaming, scaling gaming. South Korea is incidentally also the land where the really esports originated, emerged. You would see the first examples of stadiums being full, where the gamers are watching gamers playing professional tournaments. And the viewership really kind of scaled and then went to US and China. And the last decade, we have seen growth of esports really kind of becoming bigger. For those who want to really get some trivia, some fact, the World Cyber Games IP, which is in US, has more viewership than NHL, NFL, or some of the esports properties in China. Their prize money is bigger than some of the established IPs which we have grown, like Wimbledon or Australian Open. So that's how esports IPs have really grown in the last 5-7 years, and it all came from South Korea. PUBG, as you all know, is a competitive game. It thrives on esports. It thrives on community, and they have been we have been a natural partner for the competitive games PUBG here in India. And from a Krafton's perspective, they took 15%, 10% primary, 5% secondary into Nodwin as an early stage bet on the India esports market, because Nodwin has an 80% leadership of the professional tournaments and almost 100% share of voice of premium content. As I mentioned, it's a media rights business. It is an eyeball business. It is a content business, which you are kind of really looking at. And having a partnership with Krafton solidifies your publisher esports relationship and also gives us a real opportunity to understand the cutting edge esports, which is what is happening in those geographies and how can we really augment ourselves.
Thank you, Manish. Thank you, Nitish. We've come to the end of the Q&A session. I now invite Mr. Mohit Pandey from Jefferies India to give the vote of thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for your participation in this Nazara IPO Virtual Brokers Conference. From Jefferies and my fellow investment banking colleagues, ICICI Securities, IFL Securities, and Nomura Financial Advisory and Securities, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the company for giving us the opportunity to be associated with this marquee ongoing transaction. I'd like to congratulate Mr. Vikash and Mr. Nitish Mitrasen, the founding members of Nazara Technologies, who showed the vision and persistence over the years to create what is today India's leading online gaming company. I'd also like to congratulate Mr. Manish Agrawal, CEO of Nazara Technologies, for his leadership role. Today is a great milestone for the gaming industry in India, which is trying to see a golden decade ahead. It has become very evident in the last 12 months, and the next decade would be a glorious one for the industry and the participants, including companies and potentially all the stakeholders involved with the industry. It is also a great achievement for the founders and CEO who built a very strong company on very strong values. I'd also like to congratulate all the employees of Nazara who have been pillars to its successful growth story to date. Couple of points to highlight. The price band here is rupees 1100 to 1101 per equity share. It's 100% offer for sale, and the OFS offering number of shares being offered is 5.294 million. The lot size is 13, and the issue size is on the higher end 5.827 million rupees. The 87% plus of the shareholders here are offering the share, are shareholders of the company, and roughly 13% is the founding team. So with that, the anchor book opens and tomorrow, and it closes tomorrow as well. Finally, we are extremely proud of our association with the company, and I would like to congratulate the company on building a strong offering to date. And we wish, on behalf of all the book runners, we wish them all the success in the coming years. Thank you very much. And thank you everyone for attending this event.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mohit. Thank you everyone for attending the Virtual Brokers and Analysts Meet at Nazara Technologies Limited. Please feel free to reach out to us for any further queries or email us at ipo@nazara.com or ipo@adfactorspr.com. We will do our best to revert to your queries within the next 48 hours. Take care and stay safe. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.